I'd like to welcome everybody here on this wonderful rainy day. I hope it keeps up for a few days. If you'll stand with me, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Rivas.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion to acknowledge certificate of posting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. Not seeing the assemblymen, let's move on to public comment. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, we do.
This is an opportunity to address the board on items of interest not appearing on the agenda. No action may be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 54954.2. Our first speaker.
BOS.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, supervisors, members of the community. My name is Al DeVos. I'm the Gang Prevention Coordinator for San Benito County, and my role is to support the Gang Prevention Policy Committee. And as the year is winding up and it's a time to give thanks, I would like to just take a moment and acknowledge the two supervisors that sit on this policy committee, along with city council members, members of the Office of Education, and then Hollister School District. But here we're at the Board of Supervisors. So if I could ask Supervisor De La Cruz and Supervisor Rivas to come on down to receive your certificates, please. And I just want to credit them because this is a Brown Act meeting. We meet Wednesday evenings late, and they are always dedicated to being there and supporting the work we do. So, Supervisor De La Cruz, thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Supervisor Rivas, thank you very much. And we look forward to continuing the partnership with the Board of Supervisors and the city and our school districts in this. And as we wind into next year, we'll get information of who the next appointees are. They may be the same or others, and we look forward to another year of great work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Al. Do we have any other?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, Marvin Jones from Hollister. You're probably aware that Ghost of the Los Volantes were back in court last week, a week ago yesterday, I believe it was. Hearing some of the final arguments on that, 10, 12 years that's been going on. Judge going to render his decision one of these days. Hopefully this county won't get hit too bad. I was just wondering about if a county loses, you're going to have to pony up some legal fees, 10 years worth of legal fees. That's probably going to be worse than any penalty you come up with. So it came to mind there that, we've got Measure J. You're already getting some claims or potential lawsuits for Measure J. Might suggest that you put a work package in your accounting system to keep up with the expenses that Measure J is going to cost you over the next, say, 10 years, the same as the Los Volantes. Need a line item for staff time, consultants and lawyers, and if you have any penalty towards the end there, be interesting to see how much it costs the county there for defending a Measure J. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, let's move on to department heads. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there are some announcements from the department heads this morning.
Oh, wait. Margaret, is this about our close?
Pardon me?
Is this about our close?
A close?
No,
I just wanted to thank the Registrar's Office, Angela Curl and Francisco and Joe Paul, who did an excellent job during this election. I was just so proud that they were very patient with our senior citizens, that were very patient with our Latino, and I just want to say I'm so glad that we do have Spanish speakers in our register office right now, which they did help a lot of our voters. Not only them, but they also helped us on giving workshops on voter registration, and I thought that was a compliment for them, and Joe Paul did a great job during Election Day because we had so many people that were engaged in this election on Measure J. And even Congressman Sam Farr, they had a workshop in Washington, D.C. Why is there so much apathy out there with the voters? People are giving up on politicians and so forth. But he said not in San Benito County because we had Measure J. And I just would like to thank, a lot of people are complimenting us, thanking us, but I want to thank the community. The community were the ones who got out, who did their homework, they studied, and they felt that this was important. So I would like to say thank you to the voter registration and to the community of Hollister. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Is this general comments? Okay. Good morning, members of the Board of Supervisors. I was one of the active members of Measure J campaign. I want to thank Robert Rivas and Anthony Botello for coming out in support of our measure. I want to again thank the whole community. I don't think you've ever seen a community as engaged in an issue as this community was. I went door to door talking to people, and they all talked about how they had talked about the future of this county at family get-togethers, in churches, at their workplaces. And so it's really a tribute to the power of democracy, the power of people to think about their future and to make a decision. Now, as to the decision itself, there's been a lot of talk about it. We are confident that the county can defend Measure J, that it's right within the long-established context of counties and cities deciding how they use land use and what activities are compatible with the county's well-being and what activities are not compatible. So we're disappointed that Citadel Exploration has has asked for a $1.2 billion takings claim. It kind of gives you an indication that perhaps they weren't the best folks to invite into our neighborhood, given that first they told us that they were going to give us all sorts of wonderful benefits and how much they cared about our county. And then when they were told that our county didn't exactly like what they were doing, they did say that they could do this project at one point with conventional means. Now that they've said that they can't do exactly what they want, they said, well, in that case, we want to bankrupt you. So I think you're probably best off thinking about how best to extricate yourself from any relationship with them as soon as possible. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Once again, anybody else from the public like to address the board on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to department heads.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we do have some announcements this morning. The first one is at administration. We want to request to move item number 23 from consent to regular agenda. That particular item was brought to your board, I believe at our last board meeting, as was requested to come back to your board. So we had actually requested that to put on regular agenda. Unfortunately, it got accidentally moved to consent, so it needs to be put on regular agenda. The other item, item number 15, we have a few corrections on this, so we would request to pull that particular item to discuss that, and it just regards to office hours, office closure hours coming up holiday year. And the other last item that we have out of administration is item number 14. And this particular item is found first on our resolution on page 197 within the packet, and it's just a typo. It should be code 03 instead of code 01. So I just wanted to put that into the record prior to the consent agenda being approved. We're not going to pull that one. I just want to put that into the record. The other one is out of our Health and Human Services Department. This is going to be coming to you from our director, James Whiting Sword, and this is with regards to a grant that they received.
Morning. So on November the 20th, at Health and Human Services, we received a phone call from Housing and Community Development in the state of California to let us know that we had been awarded a 3-year grant of $500,000 for what's called tenant-based rental assistance. Expenditures from this grant are contingent on San Benito County utilizing the funds that are currently on balance in the home loan program, in which we currently have about 1.3. Based on recent Board of Supervisors actions, a loan application by Cheesba of $1 million was approved and is part of this home loan program. And it's in the process with the California Housing and Community Development. And then in our application for the $500,000, we proposed that the balance, which is approximately $300,000 in the home loan program, also be used for tenant-based rental assistance. Eligible households for tenant-based rental assistance in general are those households who have suffered an economic hardship and are homeless or at risk of being homeless and have income at or below the federal poverty level. We will have 3 years to use these funds after we have committed or used the balance of funds in the home loan fund, which we expect to have done sometime within the next 18 months. So we just wanted the board to know that we have an additional $500,000 in tenant-based rental assistance coming to San Benito County.
Are there any questions of Supervisor Patello?
How would people apply for this type of assistance?
They would contact the Community Services Workforce Development Office at the Health and Human Services Agency, in person, by email, call in, and the staff will see that they get the information that they need.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James.
Thank you, Jim. Our next one is out of our Behavioral Health Office. We have Alan Yamamoto. He's our director there to give you an update with regards to services, emergency service transportation from the hospital. Alan?
Good morning. Yes, this has been an ongoing issue, and I've given you updates as we've moved along with this. And I did quite a bit of research on ambulance providers, and we ended up meeting with Ken Underwood, CEO of Hazel Hawkins Hospital, yesterday, and a couple of his emergency room management staff. CAO Espinoza joined me in that meeting. And I think our conversation went very well. We received more information, got to understand the problem a little bit more. And I want to reference also that they have sent a letter to the county. I believe all of you may have received a copy. And the letter is identifying problems with ambulance service. And here's where I think there is some overlap with behavioral health issues. I was not aware the extent of ambulance transportation issues that are also occurring with clients that have medical problems. And I'm talking about people that are admitted to their hospital. They're considered to be potentially life-threatening medical problems, but not at an acute level. And apparently, as you saw in the letter that he sent to you, there is difficulty getting transportation to other facilities that provide the care that's required that Hazel Hawkins Hospital does not provide. And in that letter, it goes on to speak further about the issue of potential discrimination against beneficiaries of Medi-Cal as well as indigent clients because of the ambulance company believing, and I think it's a true belief, that economy of scale says that they cannot get the reimbursement levels required from Medi-Cal for that level of transportation. They only get the higher level of reimbursement for Medi-Cal for the most acute transportation, such as what's delivered for our 911 contract type of client. So it's a problem. And of course, psychiatric patients are included in that level because they're generally not in that high degree of life-threatening medical care need. So we have a problem that's twofold. We have a problem that's a shared problem, two different types of clients. It further exacerbates the situation in their emergency room in that our psychiatric clients have prolonged stays there because of waiting for ambulance transportation. So it's a concern. Their primary contract, Hazel Hawkins' primary contract for ambulance transportation, is with AMR. They are going to, and this is the next step, speak with AMR and find out what the cost might be to provide that lower level of care. What we would be doing is we would be supplementing the reimbursement rate that Medi-Cal would have ordinarily paid. And you have to understand the word supplement, because I don't really mean supplement, because when a Medi-Cal provider accepts Medi-Cal for payment, they have to accept it as payment in full. We would be foregoing, and they would be foregoing, the billing of Medi-Cal to allow for reimbursement at the higher level of pay to the ambulance company to get that care. We don't know what that cost might be. Hazel Hawkins Hospital is moving forward with discussion with AMR to find out what an estimate might be. And I reflected after that meeting on what may have exacerbated this problem, because we didn't have this problem in previous years. And I had alluded in an earlier meeting that Santa Clara County contracts with Metro Ambulance Service. Well, previous to that contract, and that contract was cut in 2011, that contract was with AMR. So when you look at a company like AMR, they're able to draw from other resources that they have outstationed in counties like Santa Clara County, Monterey County, Santa Cruz County. They don't have that ability anymore to have that overlap in Santa Clara County. And Santa Clara County, remember, goes all the way out to Gilroy. So you will see those blue Metro ambulance trucks all over Gilroy. You no longer see AMR. So I think that impacted the situation, and I think that's part of the problem. We can't do anything about that particular problem. So it looks like we're going to have to figure out a way to pay additional money to provide that level of service. And what I'm hoping for is some kind of partnership arrangement with the hospital where we work out an equitable sharing of that fee as one potential plan. We'll see how that goes.
Supervisor Barris?
Alan, on the psychiatric patients, would that be, when you say that we would have to supplement or pay, would that be coming out of behavioral health funds, or are we talking general fund monies? And then my other question is on the non-acute cases that are not psychiatric cases, where would that money be coming out of?
Well, the transportation is for acute psych cases. They're going to an acute inpatient hospital, so they're in the most dire level of care need. I'm anticipating from past history on the general fund that it would not come from the general fund. It would come from behavioral health.
Well.
I think that's probably accurate.
Okay. So,
But I'll be all ears if you want to offer that. No problem.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ellen, I'm
Yeah.
very pleased and thank you, because I know from a personal perspective and also from members of the community contacting me on this issue, there's some hope, and that's the important thing, because in a crisis as we talk about, transportation is the least of the concerns. I mean, we assume, and then when it does hit them at that moment, they start going, wait a minute, what's going on here? Do we have an estimated or budget that we might actually be seeing for the next couple of years? Or is this something that we don't even know what the numbers might come in, and then we're going to have to revisit this issue down the road and say, okay, we might have to transfer funds from here to there just to meet the basic level of needs?
Well, of course, in my department, I always run the numbers, and I have I have an estimate. Now, trying to estimate how many people will be hospitalized in a future year and where they will be hospitalized. Keeping in mind that transportation, the farther the distance, the higher the cost. So it's where is a bed going to be available. So I can run numbers, and I did for 3 years to different hospitals we utilized, just to try to get a rough calculation and have some type of rationale for coming up with a figure. So I have a rough estimate. I probably would be better off not to speak about that rough estimate at this point in time.
Fair enough.
But I have an idea. And again, we cannot count on history to repeat itself in the future with this type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. We have another item out of our sheriff's office. We have our sheriff here, Darren Thompson. He'd like to give a quick department head announcement.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Always an honor to be able to address you. My department head announcement today is for the purpose of reminding you of the desperate staffing levels in my office. Over the past 6 years, our agency has shrunk from 96 full-time employees to only 47, and 3 of those are vacant. This number of 47 includes all uniformed and non-uniformed jail, courts, patrol, and civilian staff members. But today I'm specifically addressing the issue of deputy sheriffs. In budget year 2009, we staffed 24 deputy sheriffs. Today, we staff 12. Those 12 are divided as follows: 2 bailiffs, funded by court security, 2 detectives, one of which is funded by the California Methamphetamine Project, 1 school resource deputy, funded 50% by the school district, 2 deputies in training. If you're doing the math, this leaves only 5 deputy sheriffs on patrol. Add 3 patrol sergeants to that mix, and we have a grand total of 8 full-time people covering 168 hours of patrol each week. That math translates to 2 people on duty to patrol and cover a territory of 1,400 square miles. We are unable to perform contemporary police work, such as separating all of the members of a household when responding to a report of domestic violence, setting a perimeter around a building that is being burglarized, staffing a reasonable response to an active shooter scenario, such as a school shooting, or simply handling more than 1 call for service at a time. If the 2 staff members are at 1 call, there is no one free to respond to another. Our local highway system makes our rural community very accessible to the 7 million people living within 2 hours of San Benito County. When a deputy encounters someone, such as a routine car stop or a suspicious person leaving an alarm call, the secondary deputy may be up to 25 minutes away. The budget cuts to this county have been deep and damaging. The most damaging of the cuts occurred in 2012, when our community experienced the loss of 10 deputy sheriffs. 6 deputies were laid off, and 4 vacant deputy positions were unfunded. The community has now been operating in that state for approximately 30 months. While tragic events in surrounding counties have resulted in the loss of officers, deputies, and community members, we continue to be fortunate here in San Benito. But 30 months is too long to count on luck. We need immediate help. My staff and I have been very sympathetic to the county's financial struggles and uncertainties, such as the court security realignment and similar issues. We have stood by in faithful service while the county works toward financial recovery. We have delayed in telling the public just how bad it is, hoping that the crooks would not become aware of the shallow field of response to in-progress crimes. But this year we have arrested crooks that are using police scanners and had knowledge of our dismal staffing levels. Anyone with a scanner knows there are only 2 units responding. January is potentially deadly conflict in North County, and other calls involving armed individuals in the community are treacherous events, even with adequate staff. Our response time to the bank robbery in San Juan Bautista was approximately 22 minutes. Our school resource officer was the first to arrive, responding from San Benito High School. I personally was the second unit. The outer areas of our county, Spring Grove, Aromas, San Juan Valley, Piscinas, Panoche, and Bitterwater rarely see a marked unit. The changes brought by Proposition 47, coupled with the changes brought by Assembly Bill 109, will surely require more time and attention from our law enforcement first responders. We do have 2 people in training. We're hopeful they will successfully complete the training within about 12 weeks. We are also currently recruiting to fill 2 vacancies, but recruiting is slow and difficult as most eligible candidates are being recruited by our neighboring agencies who offer a greater salary and more opportunities. Aside from the danger of being short-staffed and the substandard level of public protection, this staffing crisis has other domino effects. For example, when a deputy takes vacation, is at training, is ill or injured, it requires another deputy to work extra, generating costly overtime and overworking our deputies. There are members of the community that may augment our staff in an auxiliary manner, such as reserve deputies, but we cannot take advantage of that until we have a safe level of regular staffing to train them, to supervise them, and to partner with them. Auxiliary staff is designed to supplement, not to substitute. With plans to build 1,200 new residential dwellings and a 700-student elementary school, our office will be further stretched. I'm very encouraged to learn that the county has identified that issue and that you are taking steps to address this early in the permit process. Now, I realize that we are in the middle of a budget year, and there may be very few options for us at this time. But even a commitment from this board to fund additional positions in the near future would give us the green light now to begin the long and intensive recruitment process. I also understand that recruiting should not begin without a commitment from this board to create a position for which to recruit. Our hiring process takes about 3 months, and our training program takes about 4 months. This means the solution arrives about 7 months after the vacancy is created. For example, if we created a position today, the future employee would likely be hired in March and likely complete their training in July. I'm motivated to provide a higher level of protection for this community and a higher level of safety to the deputy sheriffs and sergeants that seek to protect this community by placing themselves between the innocent and the evildoer. This presentation is coming in the form of a department head announcement and solicits no action from this board today. But today I am cultivating a seed, and soon I will return with an agenda item, hoping to harvest some deputy sheriff positions. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration, and this concludes my department announcement.
Supervisor Patel?
Yeah, thank you. Sheriff, I appreciate your message this morning. I think the board has been fully aware of your staffing challenges, and certainly, you know, it needs to be a priority for us to improve that situation. And I would suggest to the chair and our administration that we agendize this item at the nearest possible date, if not the 17th, the first meeting in January, and develop milestones as far as how we are going to improve the staffing level of the patrols out in our county. And we did something similar, Supervisor De La Cruz and I, in our first term with the DA's office, and I think that would be an effective way to address this, to kind of bring some, you know, focus and timelines to bring, you know, patrols on the short term as quickly as we possibly can, and hopefully provide goals for the long-term levels where we want to strive, get back where we were. But I'm pretty pleased to see that our Assemblyman is here and heard your presentation and understands the challenges of, you know, that Samuel County has, and what we've been going through the last couple of years. Things are looking a little bit better, but we have a long ways to go. Thank you, Mr.
Supervisor.
Supervisor Barris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, agree with Supervisor Botello, and I appreciate your presentation. We have been very fortunate that we have been so short-staffed, and yet you have provided a level of safety for this community. But, you know, that it's a risk. We're taking a risk. We may not be so lucky when we do have a case or an incident that we do need our officers and our sheriffs, deputy sheriffs out there. So I know we have taken some steps, but I think we need to take further steps. Yep. Because of the timing, and you need so many months to be able to put somebody in place, I think it's better to do this sooner than later. So I agree. We need to agendize it as soon as we can, and I will support that. Thank you.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, thank you. Actually, thank you for giving me your speech earlier. I actually went into my district and talked to some people who are in law enforcement, and they actually said it's about time the sheriff stepped up in a positive way. And they knew, they understand the fiscal constraints that the county's in. And I, too, will support the concept. And I, too, want to see more boots out there. I think it's very important for our community. I think we need to support, and I think we need to lead. We as leaders in this community, we need to lead and show that we do care and we do want to support, and we're going to support it. But I also believe that somehow we have Ray, our CEO, needs to be part of the discussion process and sit down and talk about the structure. Because as Supervisor Botello has mentioned earlier, we did help the DA department a while back, but at the same time, we're limited to what we can say in your department, and the only thing that we have, and that's the budget. And I think because of that, we can build relationships, we can build partnerships, and we can move forward. And so as long as you're available and willing to work with the board and Ray, our CEO, we're going to support you. And we definitely want to protect the community. So you got commitment from the board so far right now, and I think the whole board will also support you. So let's move forward. And I know time is important, and we're going to approve the budget hopefully by July 1st. We don't want you to start working on that on July 1st. We want you to start working in January, because we want you to take advantage of that 6-month cycle before the new budget comes in place for the 14-15 cycle. So that's smart thinking, good planning, and hope we can all work together for the betterment of the community. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Rivas?
Sure. And thank you, Sheriff. I as well appreciate your comments and to support the comments that were just made. Absolutely, the CAO's office needs to be involved because nothing. In my opinion, it's old news. Where we have a sheriff's department that is extremely understaffed. It's a liability issue for us. It's a liability issue for our community. When you have, in a county our size, when you have only 2 sheriff's deputies on patrol at any given time, I mean, that's a problem. It's a significant, it's a significant a shortage. But at the same time, as much as I would like to allocate more deputies on, to your department and in our county, there's the fiscal component. Can we do it? And so, what I'm concerned about when we bring an agenda item is, first of all, can we do it from a fiscal standpoint? What does it relate to? We need 6 new deputies. Maybe we can only afford 3. That's something that I need to know. Second is overtime. It's always been a significant issue for me. How can we save in terms of the impacts that this is going to have on our overtime? As far as savings. But other than that, I think I agree with my colleague. I think we all agree. We're all on the same page. We certainly need to do something. But in my perspective, it has to be fiscally responsible, because I don't want to be here a year from now. Guess what, guys? We got to lay 3 or 4 more off. We certainly don't want to be in that position again. But thank you, Sheriff. I really appreciate it.
Sheriff, I just want to thank you. You have my support, and I'm reminded when we were walking the campaign trail 4 years ago, and you mentioned it in your talk about using reserve deputies and retired deputies. I fully support that concept and want to see it come to fruition. And you have my support in whatever we need to do to get you more deputies, keep the budget in line, and provide protection and service to the residents of San Benito County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll work with the sheriff on formulating an agenda item, and we'll talk about dates. We'll try to get it on as soon as we can, December 16th if possible. If not, we'll do the first meeting in January, just to put that on the record.
Very good.
And that is all the announcements that we have.
Okay. And I see our assemblyman has made it into the inn, and it. Do you want Mr. Leo?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, first of all, for giving me a few minutes to do my annual legislative report, and thank you for members of the public. This is something that I do at least once a year to every city council in the 9 cities that are in my district, and once to every board of supervisors, which I have 4 in the 30th Assembly District. So we got a PowerPoint just to show some of these. But meanwhile, this is getting going. First of all, I want to really thank the people of San Benito County for allowing me to continue to be your assembly member for another term. This is my last 2-year term in the assembly, because I'm under the old term limit rules to serve up for a maximum of 6 years in the assembly. I just got sworn in yesterday at the state capitol in Sacramento, and I was reappointed by the Speaker of the Assembly, Tony Atkins, reappointed as chair of the Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee, and I was also voted yesterday unanimously as the next chairman of the California Latino Legislative Caucus as well. So I'm pretty excited, and I think there's been a lot of good things to report on. Compared to my first report that I gave you back in 2011, when we were facing a $26 billion deficit, till today, when we're facing a projected surplus for at least the next 5 years. So it's good to come here and really show the progress that has been made in a short amount of time in 4 years. As I already explained, I'm chairman of the Environmental Safety Committee, but I also serve as a member of the Assembly Labor and Employment Committee, and also the Local Government Committee, and also Judiciary Committee. I'm here with one of my staffers, Daniel Dodge, who helps staff San Benito County for me. And we also have some information, and we're inviting the public to submit ideas for my annual There Ought to Be a Law contest. This is where at least one bill every year, I carry it, and it's an idea that came from a constituent in my district. Back in October, one of those bills got signed into law. It was submitted by Dory Rosinda of Watsonville, and it was to expedite hearings for certain categories of of injured workers during their workers' compensation hearings. And it's just an example of democracy when you don't have to be a lobbyist, you don't have to represent certain groups. This is ideas coming from everyday hardworking people in my district of how we can improve California laws. And so the session starts in January. So if you have any ideas, please submit your form and your ideas to my office, as we will at least choose one of those to carry this year. I'm proud to report that last year in the 2014 legislative session, I was able to send 11 bills to the governor. All 11 bills got signed into law. And that was the previous year, 2013, and this past year I sent 12 bills to the governor, and 11 were signed into law. So in the 2-year session, out of 23 bills, 22 of my bills were signed by Governor Brown. The only one that wasn't signed, that was vetoed this year, I will explain in a separate slide in just a bit, because the governor has promised that with some technical changes we could get that bill signed next year, and it's a bill I think that would be important for economic development for Hollister and San Benito County. So we have a wide range of legislative accomplishments out of those 12 bills. From some of those bills included protecting victims of human trafficking. It also cracked down on illegal gun trafficking that coming from out of state, because 59 to 65% of the crimes committed in California either were guns that are untraceable or were guns that were illegally trafficked from outside of California. And we got that signed into law as well. But even there were some other accomplishments that were not bills. They started out as bills, but they became part of the budget. And one of those was, I'm very proud of, was that California, the U.S. Department of Labor was holding up $4.2 billion in transit funding for the state of California. That would have meant the loss of several $million in each of our counties for transit, our local buses, BART, and other types of public transit. And I was able to introduce a bill that would resolve a conflict of law that existed between state and federal law that was causing the problem. In the end, it got dealt with the budget, and we freed up $4.2 billion to come into California, which only helps create jobs and keeps public transit going strong across the state. I think out of those 2.2 billion alone was for Los Angeles County. But overall, we're paying down our debt in California. That has helped our credit rating continue to increase, which helps California's recovering economy. We've also instituted the Rainy Day Fund because the people of California approved Proposition 2, basically meaning that we're saving a little bit more when times are better, so that if we hit tough financial times again, it can mitigate the impacts that it has on our local communities. And as I mentioned earlier, we're also projected to have a budget surplus for the next 5 years, including this year alone. We're over $4.2 billion in budget surplus in the state of California. So 2.2 went into the Rainy Day Fund. We have over $2 billion also above what was anticipated because the economy is recovering. California is also leading the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. A year ago, we had 22% uninsured in California. Now we're at 11%. So only in 1 year, we closed the gap of people who didn't have medical insurance. But it really shows us that there's more work to be done. But California is leading the way to try to make sure more Californians have health care coverage. And also this past year, this fiscal year that we're in now, we made a commitment to restore money to our public schools. And we included $5.6 billion more for K-12 schools in this fiscal year alone from the previous year. This year, we also implemented what I came to report on, I think, a couple years ago. We were trying to make college affordable. It was a commitment to our young people, students here in San Benito County who graduate, who work hard, who overcome so many obstacles. But yet, when they transfer to a CSU campus or a UC campus, college tuition is at an all-time high. So with this new middle-class scholarship, it's going to be phased in over 4 years, but when it's fully phased in, it will result in a 40% reduction in tuition at the CSU or UC system. So that basically means for a family here in Hollister who's making $100,000 or less, they're going to save at least $5,000 a year, which is $20,000 over 4 years to attend a UC campus. If they're going to CSU Monterey Bay, it's $2,200, which over 4 years is about $9,000 savings. There is a big fight going on right now with the president of the University of California because they're proposing tuition increases 5% for the next 4 years. That's a fight the governor said he's not going to, that he's going to fight to keep college tuition down. And if it means that we have to go look at the budget and make sure that we keep college tuition flat and not increase it further, that's something that's going to be a big item of discussion, and we are all committed to make sure that those fees do not increase for our students. But this year alone, 73,000 students already benefited of that middle-class scholarship this year. And it's not only the ones that are 100,000 or less. If you're between 100 and 125, when it's fully phased in, it'll be a 25% reduction in tuition. And families that make between 125 to 150,000 a year will get a 10% reduction. So it will help a wide range of hardworking Californians. So this was the only bill that was vetoed last year. This is something I've been working on for the last 3 years. And this was a bill that I worked very closely with the California League of Cities to create a new tool for economic development and affordable housing for economically disadvantaged communities. Communities that are struggling, just like Hollister, just like Salinas and Watsonville. We need new tools to attract jobs and expand jobs and also create affordable housing for our local workforce. So this is my 3rd year. Next year will be my 4th year working on this bill. This came about when redevelopment was ended. Redevelopment used to be a tool where communities like Hollister could keep some local tax increment. Instead of sending it to Sacramento, you keep it here to attract employers, new companies, or companies that are already here. If they wanted to expand, you could provide some incentives or some additional help to make that happen. So for example, that money could be used for if a company was going to come in and build a brand new company here in town, you could use that money to fix the streets, fix the sewer, add additional incentives for them to invest in your community. 20% used to be set aside for a fund just for affordable housing, but that was eliminated back in 2011, and I was only one of 3 Democrats who didn't vote to eliminate that important tool for local communities. My platform was, let's reform it, let's not eliminate a tool that's so important for our local communities. I was in the minority, unfortunately, but I've been working to bring another tool and this bill is specifically targeted for cities with high crime, high unemployment, high poverty rates within a city. So many of our cities in the 30th district would certainly qualify. The governor, I was told the governor really liked the bill. He just wants to make some technical changes to include an entirely new chapter where it doesn't refer back to old redevelopment law. And working with the governor, we're going to be able to get that sent to the governor again and implement it, and hopefully it will be a tool to help communities grow jobs in future years. And again, it's only local taxes that are already generated locally. You keep some of that instead of sending it to Sacramento to create jobs here locally. I think we did pass out some information on some other bills around infrastructure finance districts. Those are other tools for economic development, but it's more complicated. But I passed it out because there were several bills passed last year that explain how that could be used for economic development purposes and affordable housing. But today's a symbolic day to be coming and talking about water because, we're going to get some good amount of water the next few days throughout California. But when I was doing these presentations before the water bond passed, I was trying to explain how important this was for jobs, for agriculture, and for our local communities. This photo here I took about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, as I was passing by my wife's hometown near Porterville in the Central Valley. These a year ago were lush orange groves that were full of oranges, and other parts there were lemons and tangerines. And here this photo is that these orchards are going dry in some of the most fertile agricultural lands in California because of a lack of water. And with no water, that means the loss of jobs. And when people have no jobs, it hurts local businesses, hurts the local economy, and there's less taxes to pay for services that you were just all talking about, like public safety. So I brought this slide because it shows, it's kind of hard to see, it's a little dark, but the first slide, the first image there is where California was in the second worst category of the drought, which is the extreme drought category, and you could see it covered most of the state. And yet, only 10 months later, in October, most of California now is in the worst category, which is exceptional drought. And so that shows the major change that happened in only 10 months. So without these rains that are falling right now, California would probably see probably the worst drought since the Dust Bowl era. Okay, so thanks to the voters, you guys passed Proposition 1, which approved a $7.5 billion water bond to help address the long-term solutions for future droughts in California. The drought included $2.7 billion for water storage infrastructure projects, and those are focused on the Central Valley grid. That's the dams that transfer water all throughout the Central Valley. But believe it or not, some of that water goes to San Luis Reservoir and then comes to here to San Benito County. So these projects would certainly be part of a long-term solution of also including a future sustainable water source that is connected to San Benito County. But also I fought hard to get an additional monies for what's called the Central Coast IRWIMP. That's the regional pot of money for water projects in our area. We got a total of $43 million, but because of my efforts, we got an additional $15 million more included for the Central Coast region. We got additional monies for the Coastal Conservancy, $80 million, $5.2 million for clean and safe drinking water. That's incorrect there, but it's supposed to be $7.25 million for water recycling projects, $900 million for groundwater sustainability, $395 for flood management, and at 1.5, that's supposed to be billion for ecosystems and watershed protections, and also regional water reliability. So the reason I point this out is that in the water bond, there's different pots of money, but there's many of those that would certainly be open to benefit future water projects that are important to San Benito County as well. And I will certainly look forward to working with the county supervisors if they apply for any of those fundings in the future. This was just an image to remind folks what happened to communities not too far from here. This is in Mendota. These were the food lines that happened in 2009, where so many hardworking families were out of jobs because of a lack of water. And this was a march they had from Mendota to the San Luis Reservoir, trying to raise attention of how a lack of water was impacting some of the some of the poorest families in those respective communities. So I'll just skip over this a little bit. The last thing I want to talk about was a bill that I authored in 2013, but it goes into effect in 31 days from now, on January 2nd. This is the driver's license bill for immigrants, and this was a town hall we had on September 4th, but as you can see, hundreds of people attended after work to get information of this new law. And this was a bill that I'm very proud of because I work very closely with Democrats, Republicans, law enforcement, including I got the first endorsement by California Police Chiefs Association because I addressed all their concerns in the bill. It was co-authored by our local Senator Anthony Canella, and I'm very proud that we got several other Republicans to come together and pass a very significant, important piece of legislation. All the agriculture associations, labor, immigrant rights groups were all on board. But this is expected to help over 2 million immigrants in the state of California. And I always like telling people it doesn't give them a license, it only gives them the opportunity to earn it just like everyone else. You have to take the written test, the driving test, and they have to have auto insurance just like everyone else in the state of California. That way that they'll know the rules of the road, and if there's an accident, they will also be covered, and that benefits everyone using our roads and highways. But they also must prove additional requirements. You have to prove that they've been a California resident for at least 6 months, and there's some additional documents they have to turn in to show that they qualify, and also to avoid fraud. But one thing that is good about the bill is that we kept it affordable at $33, so it'll be the same cost just as everyone else. But the DMV is hiring 1,000 new workers to implement this bill this year, and there will be 4 additional regional offices, including one in San Jose that will solely process driver's license bills starting January 2nd. So one of the controversies in the bill is what will the license look like? And so I put this slide so members of the public could see what the changes are. There was controversy because in 2005, Congress passed the Federal Real ID Act, and that required that in future years, if states were to grant driver's license to immigrants, they must put distinguishable features on the front of the license. And so there was debate because some of the immigrant rights groups were saying, well, that might lead to discrimination. I said we have to comply with federal law, and that's why I was able to work with our local, our California police chiefs to get their support. We proposed a bill that made one change on the letter in the front of the license, but unfortunately, the Department of Homeland Security said that was not in compliance with federal law. So the new changes will be, if you see on the right-hand slide, the front of the license has some words on top of the license that will say federal limits apply. That is the compromise we reached with the Department of Homeland Security, and that basically puts limits on this license. This license could be used for driving, but it cannot be used to board an airplane. and that's for TSA. If they see that, they'll know that this license has limitations, and it also cannot be used to enter secure federal buildings like the Pentagon or some other secure facility. So that's the only limits it will have, but with this change, it will be in compliance with federal law and be able to move forward. But we also included some other protections in the law. We said that California was the only state to include anti-discrimination provisions, so you could not discriminate against anyone who has this particular types of license. And an additional bill that was signed this past year basically makes it clear that all information submitted to the Department of Motor Vehicles, it's confidential, cannot be shared with any outside agencies to address concerns coming from the immigrant communities. In addition, another bill that was signed was a bill to make it clear and illegal that it's illegal to charge anyone a fee to fill out these DMV applications. That's because every time they pass an immigrant piece of legislation, like AB 60, there's always people out there trying to exploit immigrant communities, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. But in the end, we think this bill will make our roads safer because people who we already know are driving on the roads, now they'll be able to show that they know the rules of the road. They'll be able to take their kids to school in the morning, go to work, go to the grocery store without fear that the cars might get impounded and taken away for 30 days. But this is also expected to be a huge economic benefit because now over 2 million people will be able to buy auto insurance, will be able to buy vehicles, and as some of our local banks managers have told me, they have auto loans that are available, lines of credit are available to so many of our local families, but the number one requirement is that they have a driver's license. So this will open lines of credit for our local families. One thing that I wanted to, before I take questions, one thing that I didn't have a slide on, but I wanted to address our sheriffs because I think you guys have an outstanding sheriff who has worked good with, I think, all members of the community and certainly with the state legislators. But this past year, there was a crisis here at the new courthouse across the street. So the court administrative officer, Gil Solorio, the presiding judge, Stephen Sanders, and our sheriff came to me, said, we're opening a brand new courthouse, but because of funding formula changes that happened, we're facing not having additional bailiffs because this court has additional security. There's cameras. It needs to be you need additional staff to make sure that court is secure. And they were facing a dilemma. They needed at least $400,000 more to hire those additional officers. So I started working closely with the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, Tani Cantil-Sacayue, and also the court facilities manager, the Judicial Council, to see how could we get a funding augmentation, including having conversations with the governor to make sure we got additional bailiffs. I used to be a staff attorney for the Monterey County Superior Court, and I know that court security is critical because you have inmates that are being processed and having the criminal court proceedings. I used to work in family law court proceedings that there's a lot of emotions going on when you're talking about people's personal relationships or children, child custody disputes, domestic violence. And so fortunately, we were able to get a line item put into the budget that approved two counties that were in a similar situation, San Benito, and I think the other one was Colusa County up north in another rural area, but we were able to secure the $400,000 for the additional bailiffs here at the courthouse. So for me, that was one example. When they were short-staffed, as you just heard already, it was going to put additional constraints on the Sheriff's Department by not having the needed bailiffs to run a secure courthouse, and we were able to get that money. So that was one positive thing that I was able to help on, and I look forward to continue to work with this Board of Supervisors and Sheriff Thompson to get additional resources that we can from the state and other competitive funding that's available as well. So that's basically my presentation. I just want to say thank you for your time and allowing me to report to you and the people of San Benito County of what we're doing in Sacramento. But I look forward to working hard another 2 years in the State Assembly, and look forward, if there's any other priorities that you have for me to work on, I'm eager to roll my sleeves and work hard with you as well. So thank you very much, everybody.
Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, thank you, Assemblyman Leo, for taking the time this morning to give us this legislative update, and we appreciate your work. And I personally want to thank you for your support on the courthouse security. It's, was absolutely needed to have that help, and you being here to listen to what the sheriff and our staffing levels for, public protection, that $400,000 or $450,000 actually is out of our general fund budget for courthouse security. The sheriff had a mandate from the state to provide security to the courthouse, and that is the impact on our general fund with the additional staffing needs at the courthouse, took deputies off of our street. And when I went to, I get up to Sacramento every once in a while for RCRC meetings, and, I try to run it through RCRC, and they said, well, good luck with that. But you, Senator Canella, the work of, the board, our sheriff at his efforts at Sacramento and the court across the street, we were successful getting that funding for additional security needs, and can't do it without you. Thank you.
Thank you. And also the previous year, San Benito County would jointly apply with Gilroy for funding for the gang task force. I think it was COPS funding. And even the money that you already have, it's never guaranteed. You got to get it renewed. And we were at risk of losing that additional funding, probably focusing on the most important part of some of the crime we have here, where it's gang related, and you got to really focus on the people who are calling the shots. And so I worked closely with Senator Canella as well, and trying to make sure we kept that funding, and we were successful. And that was a previous battle in that previous year, So there'll be other efforts, and I just those are just some of the examples. I think that we have been successful, but certainly we want to try to see if we could draw down additional resources to help alleviate the current situation we're facing here.
Supervisor
Thank you,
Barrios?
Mr. Chair. Assemblyman Alejo, I want to thank you for your attention to San Benito County, your open door policy. I look forward to working with you on a lot of other projects. We've been very successful with the cooperation between you and Senator Canella has made a big difference for San Benito County. I know that we still have that ERAF, dollars out there. I would like to pursue that again. So I'm hoping that in the near future, we can work with you again. I know you made a great effort for us, but it didn't work this time. Maybe it'll work the next time. So thank you.
And definitely what we had heard previously from that ERAF issue that has lingered, I think, since 2005 or so, was that we had a tough economic situation in previous years. Now that the economy is recovering, I think the timing is right to go back and ask for what. And San Benito County was only asking what legislative relief that they provided to other counties who had the similar problem years ago. So I think this is the right time to do that this next session. Hopefully, take care of that issue once and for all.
I hope so too. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Assemblyman, I just want to thank you also for coming, sharing with us, and we do appreciate all you do for San Benito County, and we know you have done a lot for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we finished department head announcements, correct? Okay, we'll move on to board announcement. Supervisor Rivas?
Yes, I do have an announcement, Mr. Chair. And really, it's not an announcement, it's more of a request. I would really like an update regarding, I'd like to hear something from our city officials about the state of our fire department. We have a contract with over $1 million with them. It was an example of great cooperation between the county and city. But unfortunately, in the last few months, I feel it's been anything but that. I'm getting questions in our community from members of my district, questions that I cannot answer. And I think that the city needs to step up to the plate, and they have to, give us an update as far as the status of their personnel, their fire chief. I'm extremely frustrated. It's disappointing. I have questions about response times, and I'm starting to think that this contract is one big mistake. So, with that said, I really hope that we can get some representation from the city, and we could talk about the state of our fire service in this county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Just two comments. The first one is, with all due respect, I'll wait to give my report on the CSAC conference as an alternate under Supervisor Barrios' report later on the agenda. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
And then the second note, I just want to say that we just had a business become official opening. La Cretinas actually had a grand opening and invited members of the community on Sunday, and some of the members of the board were there. And I want to wish Gustavo success in this future business, and I hope because it provides tax dollars to our community and more opportunities for the public to eat at this restaurant at downtown Hollister, La Cocina. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 items to report on. On the Pajaro River Watershed Prevention Authority, progress has been made on the Pajaro River. While there are no major improvements on the horizon for the levee to prevent major flooding, the levee crest has been restored and the river bench excavation project has been completed. The Army Corps of Engineers continues to review our regional needs, and they are in front of the federal government trying to get funding, but I don't believe that we're even on the list. So, but it's good to say that at least the crest has been restored. As far as the VTA Route 152, they gave a briefing on the trade corridor project, and they handed out a little display of what they have done and what they plan to do in the future. As far as 152, this all started back years ago, 5 years ago at a minimum, back in 2010, and they identified some of the issues that we have, which start from socioeconomic issues, bottlenecking, safety, and all down to access control. So it's back on the table in full force. I asked them that San Benito County needs to be at the table because it affects the northern part of our county and some of the flood areas there. So they have promised that they will get us to the table as soon as they start the actual planning. A lot of work has been done. They have described how the corridor may go forward. They have ideas ranging from starting from US 101 to 156 here in San Benito County, or starting from Highway 5 all the way to 156 and then to 101. There was an idea that Merced County was going to be involved to go all the way to Highway 99, but they have opted to not be a part of this, and primarily the issues were all related to tolling. And so they are not at the table anymore. It will be just Santa Clara County and San Benito County. There are 2 alternatives that they're looking at, and I'm sure that those will come before us in the very near future. There has been work that's happened since 2010, technical studies for air quality, biology, cultural, on and on. And the objectives, of course, are to improve the safety and the traffic operations, to reduce the regional traffic on local roadways, and improve corridor mobility. The next step would be for coming up would be to secure the funding, which is always an issue. So there's not a lot of money in the county. There's probably no money for this project in the county. Very little in Santa Clara County. So we're going to have to rely on state money to move forward with these. With this huge project. They're looking at 300 to 500 million just to get it going, just to be able to do all the work that needs, the groundwork, in order to get this project off. And that was it. So we will be hearing from them soon, and I hope to be a part of that. I was on the mobility partnership when this all started, and I believe Supervisor Rivas was as well. So we'll have renewed commitment to that project.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Mr.
Very
Chair.
good. Thank you. Supervisor Botello?
Okay. I regret that I have to inform the board and the county that my Parks and Recreation Commissioner is resigning from his post. Jim West, who has been from the start of the Parks and Rec Commission, when we instituted that, I think in 2009, something like that. Anyway, he's done a great job for the county with Parks and Rec. That commission has been able to put together a Parks and Rec plan, which is absolutely critical as far as getting grants and monies that may be available to improve recreation programs in the county. And I certainly want to wish him the best of luck in his future endeavor, being a councilman in the city of San Juan Bautista. I'm sure he'll have a lot of success there. The second thing, I kind of out of respect to Supervisor Rivas' comments on the fire department situation. I'm on the fire committee along with Chairman Munzer, and we get periodic reports from the fire chief as far as with response times and staffing levels, and there is a change with the fire, administration with the city of Hollister. At the last meeting, we had about a month ago already. We have meetings first week of the month. We discussed starting work on creating a JPA or a fire district. I think that's absolutely critical to begin right now for the interest of conveying those public safety services in the most cost-effective way, not only for the city of Hollister, but for the entire county. And also, another thing that we're working on is the equipment breakdown in the department. The county owns equipment, the city of Hollister owns equipment, city of San Juan Bautista has as well. And with the consolidation, there has been added staffing in the 3 stations that are operating right now. We're building a 4th one out on Flynn Road, and hopefully that's still be in operation by middle of this spring or summer. And also the consolidation of equipment. All those things are possible because we're working together. And should we be a little bit more informed? Absolutely, and we're working on that. And this is the end of the first contract, and there are to be some rough edges. We're working through those, but you're absolutely correct. We should have try to agendize that first part of this coming year for a more formal presentation to the full board and to let everybody know where we're at with the fire department. I don't know, Chairman Munzer, if you want to add more to that.
Yeah, I will when are you done with your?
Okay.
Are you done with your announcements?
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, yeah. So I too want to see this agendized. Hopefully, if not our next meeting, then very early next year. And we need an update from the city of Hollister on the status of the fire department. I know there's been some issues with the cost overrun that the city has been reporting, and I think we all received an email about how did that affect our contract. But technically it doesn't, because we're under contract with the city, and so now will affect our renewal of the contract. And that's a question that will have to be answered. The only other thing I have to announce is that I was nominated and voted by the board of AMBAG to be their next president. So I will be the president of AMBAG for 2015. Remember what year it is.
How fun.
Okay, with that, I'm going to make a change in our order, and I'm going to move to item number 26, which is a public hearing on the emergency tree ordinance.
Before consent?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board will now hold a public hearing to consider agenda item number 26, which is to adopt an interim ordinance to extend the temporary moratorium adopted on October 21st, 2014 on the cutting and protection of trees in the urban areas of San Benito County for an additional 10 months and 15 days. There is a handout in the back if members of the public would like to obtain a copy of it. And Ms. Thompson will present this item.
I'll read the one change that we have to the agenda posting for the record, so everybody that's in the audience has the opportunity to hear what the new language is. The ordinance that is presented for the board's consideration today is the same ordinance that was adopted on October 21st, I believe, or 27th. The last time it was before the Board of Supervisors. The only change is that the ordinance has been extended for an additional 10 months and 15 days. It needs to be adopted by 4/5 of the Board of Supervisors. This allows the ordinance and the temporary moratorium to stay in effect for the additional period of time. In the meantime, staff's going to undertake working with the board to determine what type of permanent tree ordinance the board would like to see. I do suggest that we add one additional exemption. It would be a new paragraph J under 25.29.204. And it indicates, this is the exact language, when trees are removed as part of a development project that has been considered under CEQA, and A, the project considered the removal of designated trees, or B, the removal of trees is contained in a landscape plan submitted in compliance with the condition of approval for the approved project. This allows projects that have gone before the Planning Commission or will go before the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors. There are development projects, and that's included as part of the project to allow it to have an additional exemption. So we'd like to open it up for the public hearing, and then I would ask that the board take the recommended items, action items. Does the board have any questions for staff before we begin? Okay.
Supervisor Patillo?
Yeah, so reading this exemption, it would be considered under CEQA. Now, would that be after the CEQA is certified or in the process of the environmental review?
It would be during the process of the environmental review. The project would be undergoing CEQA, so it wouldn't be, the trees may be discussed in the project description for the CEQA, but it really is intended that when a project that has undergone CEQA review and then's come before the Planning Commission for approval, that is when it occurs, and then one of these other two sections has to kick in. Either the project has to have considered the removal of designated trees, and that would have been in the project description. So, for example, if it says whatever the project is, let's say build 3 houses and remove certain trees, so it could designate that in the CEQA description. Or if it's contained in a landscape plan, for example, if they say we want to remove this tree and then plant 10 additional trees, and that would be when the landscape plan is required as a condition of approval, and those are usually often part of the CEQA process as well, that a landscape plan has to be approved, submitted to the planning department for approval.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Kind of right now.
Okay.
Is there any other questions of Barbara at this time? Okay, I will open up the public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, there is. Bill Healy?
There were no more speakers.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the board and the chair for this. My name is Bill Healy. I live in Ridgemark, 1335 Sunny's Way. I just wanted to make sure that this ordinance is continued onward and possibly even for a full-time development of a tree ordinance. In Ridgemark, really the developer who is trying to develop the property, as any typical developer, has no aesthetic value of what it looks like. All they want to do is rip it up, make it flat, so they can put the streets in. They don't care about how the trees are, how many trees were there. Many of these trees have been there long before Ridgemark was even developed. Additionally, developers only want profit. So for them, trees, houses, ponds, or whatever are a barrier for them to be able to make it flat, put it in the streets. So they're going to get rid of every piece they can so that they can make these houses as quickly as they can and as profitably as they can. Also, the current owner of JMK has put only about $3.5 to $5 million into it. The homeowners, I think there's about 1,100 homeowners in Ridgemark Estates totally. 10 of those homes in the last 5 years have been equal to, when the people bought them, the same value that JMK put in. That's about $5 million. And 10 people paid $500,000 for their house, they equaled his value. Problem is, we have to live with what's happening. We have to live without the trees being there. These are things that were aesthetics enough for us to buy in there. This is part of our life. And JMK, when they leave, or any developer leaves, they don't live there. They go back to their place in San Jose and they have their own aesthetics there. So, you know, what we want to do is to make sure that we get a chance to have those same trees, the same view we like, the same walks when we walk, the same shade that we have, the same ability for our birds to have a home or whatever. So we need to keep all the trees we can. If they're dead, yes, they should go out. But currently, if you go out and drive along even Highway 25, you'll see 5 different trees laying down on this golf course. If he was so concerned about the dead trees, why hasn't he removed those? Okay? And then I think the last thing we have to take a look at, too, is we have a lifestyle. And I bought into that lifestyle, and I paid a premium for it. And I think I've only been here 6 years, but I picked up the indication that people always looked at Ridgemark was its own estate. Well, it is, and it has a purpose, and it has a lifestyle, and the lifestyle is what it is today, not what it will be without trees around it. So I just wanted to ask that the ordinance is continued on for the 10 months, that the county does look at a tree ordinance. We're going to build about another 10,000 houses sometimes in the next 5 years. We want to make sure we protect those trees as well. Thank you, and have a good day.
Carol Dutra.
Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, my name is Carol Dutra, and I am a resident of San Benito County. A picture is worth 1,000 words, so we brought 2 pictures with us today. On Monday, the 13th of October, I was looking out my kitchen window that looks over our backyard, and I saw a green golf course vehicle, one that does not have a roof, stopped in back of the eucalyptus tree outside of our backyard fence. The vehicle was driven by a white-haired man. I do not know who he was. He drove over to our fence, and his passenger got out of the vehicle and looked over the fence in my direction towards me where I was at my kitchen window. I saw that it was Alex Kariotis. Alex got back into the vehicle, and his driver drove away. I left the window and headed to our garage to go out our back door. I was wondering, why was Alex there at our backyard fence? I walked over to our fence and saw Alex and his driver drive down the fairway, stopping at trees that Alex directed his driver to stop at. His driver would get out of the vehicle with a bucket in hand and go behind whichever tree he was instructed to stop at. He did something. I could not see what he was doing. It was out of my line of vision. After they were out of sight down the fairway, I took my key and opened my backyard fence. I went out on the fairway and went over to the eucalyptus tree that is on the fairway outside of our fence, and on the back side of this tree, I saw that a large red X had been freshly painted in red paint. I looked at the 2 Monterey pines that are also close to our backyard fence and saw that one of the pines was also freshly marked with a red paint X. I was very upset because this was October 13th, and Judge Tobias had issued his restraining order back on the 9th of October. I was so upset at this point that I did email Supervisor Munzer and told him what I had just witnessed. I have to say that Alex Kariotis is not an arborist, yet he was selecting trees for destruction. And it was October 13th, and October 9th was the date that the restraining order was issued. Please remember, trees came first on this planet before we did.
Please remember that trees provide us with oxygen that we need to survive. Please extend the emergency tree ordinance so more healthy, mature trees in San Benito County are allowed to live. And what happened in Ridgemark never happens again in our county. Trees need our protection, and we need trees for our survival. I made it?
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Jack Murphy?
Good morning, Chairman and Supervisors. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I am Jack Murphy. I live at Ridgemark. I am not on the golf course. However, recognizing the fact that the golf course is a key element in the community, the actions that were taken in the October timeframe, some of which were just previously described, really created a situation where, and this is, again, my opinion only, that it was in part a punitive action against not only the homeowners, but also the indigenous wildlife that is resident in that area. And the impact of that has already been seen and felt. Ordinarily, I am very much against any additional governmental influence, actions, reactions, etc. This is one situation where I think we need to rely upon our elected officials to function on our behalf and protect not only the homeowners, the integrity of the value of our homes, our lifestyles, but also the wildlife that's been resident there. So I encourage the supervisors to continue the action with regard to the ordinance and come up with something that will be universally applicable across the county. Thank you.
Have Alex go first.
What's that?
Can I have Alex go first?
Good morning, Supervisors. I'd like to first start off and say that I wasn't even in the country on October 13th. Mrs. Dutra's story doesn't make sense as I was in China with my father. However, on that day, our superintendent, Eric Boyd, did drive the property with a certified arborist, as indicated by the report submitted to the county. I'd like to take you through my relationship with Ridgemark Homeowners Association with regards to the trees. In June 2014, I received a letter from their attorney stating their expectation that we maintain the closed course up to fire safety standards and maximizing safety. In July, I received some emails from one of their board members, Mel Tungate, beginning to flag trees as dead or dying and needed attention. Now, this was only 2 or 3 trees at the time, but began a process in September and October where we did have certified tree contractors and arborists come out, and they flagged approximately 125 to 150 trees that needed removal. When we started to remove the trees, the community called the sheriff, KION News, the Freelance, Environmental Protection Agency, Fish and Game, the County Building and Planning, county supervisors, and they also had legal action with us in court. After that, we actually toured the property with Ridgemark Homeowners Association board member Mel Tungate again, and their arborist. And their arborist agreed that 100 to 107 trees, it became 107 trees later on, but that day he agreed that 100 of the trees actually were dead and needed to go. So the disputed amount of trees are only about 25 right now. So you have this board that's asking us to take action. They may not agree with all the trees we want to remove, but the vast majority, about 83 to 85% of the trees that we had flagged for removal, they're actually agreeing to. So there's some kind of miscommunication going on between their board as well as their residents. We're trying to maximize the safety in the community by removing these dead trees. And with the winter months approaching, as evidenced by the much-needed water storm going on right now, puts us at a position where we have liability, where we need to address these trees and we're unable to do so. Extending this tree ordinance would be an undue burden to us and also expose many of the homes and residents in the community to potential damage and or harm. So for all these reasons, I'm adamantly opposed to extending this tree ordinance any longer than it already is. Thank you.
Clearly, we have a communication problem between the homeowners and the developer. We've got the homeowners board agreeing on 86% or a large number of the trees that are dead that need to be replaced. We've sent the board a landscaping of a potential new development. We'd like to get some response on that because we've sent that to each one of you. I'm disappointed Robert didn't return our phone call because we'd like to have those discussions with you. Oh, we did? Oh, I'm sorry. Apologize. But when trees die, when you don't have water, I guess about 25% of those trees have died. And for our liability, we don't want any trees to fall on any home or this isn't the purpose of taking the trees out for development. It's the purpose of protecting many of the homeowners that live there. And some of the homeowners, what are you laughing at? Anyway.
Mr. Chair.
We have to find a way for us all to get along. We're looking to potentially develop that property. We own the property. You don't. You are neighbors. We know we need to beautify the area. Many of these trees that are coming out, new trees will have to go back in. New landscaping will need to go in. You don't develop a property without beautifying it. You can't sell a home. You can't. Our job is not to. We didn't close the golf course.
You need to address the board,
okay.
not the audience.
We didn't close the golf course for any other reason than, the water district was cutting our water off, or were going to charge us a large amount of penalties if we went above it. So we were forced to close the golf course down. Now, we have a golf course that doesn't benefit anybody, or a closed golf course that doesn't benefit anybody right now. We'd like to, put new homes in the area. We've tried to work with the homeowners associations. We've had many meetings with them. And unfortunately, right after we had one of the meetings, they filed a lawsuit against us. And thus we, have to get that resolved before we can really move forward. We're trying to move forward to develop the property. In the process, we will be adding new trees, increasing and beautifying the landscaping like we did on the, what was the homeowner's number, 14? We'll put all those trees in. Unit 11. Yeah, Unit 11, we put in, God, I don't know, 60, 70 trees in there and beautified that area. That's the kind of look that you'll probably end up if we get this process done. We'd like to have the homeowners work with us, cooperate with us, communicate with us.
Good morning. My name is Fidelis Kornajenki, and I live in Ridgemark. I hear they're cutting the trees to protect us. We need protection, but may God protect us from this gentleman over here. The trees that they cut down, they were very, very healthy trees because they were most of behind my house. They're not trees that were sick. This reminds me, 522 years ago when Colombo landed to the shore of the United States, they used to call it the New World, he encountered the Native of America, the Indians. They labeled these people as uneducated people. That was a big mistake, because they had the greatest education is not available in any university. They have a wisdom and practical way of living and tremendous respect for nature. They used to call Earth Mother Earth. And they reached the point that they worship because they know that was the only resource of surviving. Today, one of the intellectual white men, come on, this is no longer Mother Earth. It's not even a stepmother, but it's an object to be abused, mistreated, used to our pleasure. This is what I call greedy, for better choice of a word. We are followers of Machiavelli. Machiavelli wrote a book, and in his book, this philosophy was that the end justify the means. In other words, if I want to reach point A to point B, and somebody tries to stop me, it's illegal to destroy everything. It tries to stop me. And that's what this gentleman is trying to do. Is it trashing a golf course? Is it trashing the dream of a homeowner they bought it with a good price to live in a beautiful landscaping place? Beautiful trees, where trees are very important for us, for the air we breathe, the beautiful greenery. Now, he wants to make a subdivision like any other place. No, we can't allow it to do that. Because we have to understand one thing. Think of the Indian, they understood since day one. This land, this planet, doesn't belong to us, but to the future generation. And it's our right to protect that. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
My name is Teresa Betancourt. I'm a 37-year resident of Ridgemark Homes Association. I am president of Ridgemark Homes Association currently. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for their previous support on the emergency tree ordinance and for allowing us the opportunity to speak again today in hopes of extending the same until an acceptable permanent draft may be presented. Several property owners previously shared how vitally important trees are to our environment and our personal health. Your affirmative vote told us that most of you understood that. There was concern regarding cost to the County of San Benito. I'm sure that can be and is being addressed in the drafting of the permanent ordinance. Before the recent devastation of the trees within the Ridgemark community, I had not given a tree ordinance any thought at all. I wish I had, as there are a number of beautiful trees that were sacrificed as a wake-up call to many of us who have been naive enough to believe that the current system protects the environment when a property owner has a plan contrary to the historical use of land. The tree ordinance does no harm to any lot or property owner. There is no question as to the removal of a dead tree. There are justifiable reasons to remove a live tree, which can effectively be addressed through a reasonable process within the ordinance. Most communities have rules regarding tree removal. For example, the city of Hollister has a tree ordinance. Most homes associations have rules regarding tree removal. Ridgemark Homes Association, CC&Rs, require ARC board approval before a mature tree can be removed. ARC board approval and oversight of that body is known to save many neighboring relationships. Again, the ordinance does no harm, but it does assure that environment is not altered premature of any plan to develop. Before someone changes the historical use of land, there is a number of county codes and requirements to be met. Without the tree ordinance, the system comes up short. The tree ordinance is just one more of those hoops that a landowner should have to be required to go through before they alter the environment premature of any building permit, site plan, or EIR. What has happened at Ridgemark should never be repeated in San Benito County. If allowed to continue, it is a mockery of the system that is in place to protect the environment. It is a mockery of the officials appointed to enforce the system. It's a mockery to those that must live with the aftermath. I ask that all 5 of you take seriously the positive effect the ordinance can have on all residential communities within San Benito County. I ask that all 5 of you vote affirmatively to extend the current emergency tree ordinance to allow time for a well-drafted permanent ordinance that will protect San Benito County's heritage trees. We've got a lot of rain today, enough rain that some drought-stressed trees may have the chance to survive. Give them that chance. Thank you.
Ms. Betancourt, before you sit down, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Your temporary restraining order that the courts issued, what areas does that cover?
It protects the fallow, the basically abandoned golf course, but not the healthier golf course that's currently still a golf course.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I think I have
Sure,
one
Supervisor
question
Patella?
for
Yes.
Ms. Betancourt. Does the homeowners association have any intent as far as, collaborating with Cariotis as far as, working through this, some of these issues with the trees, but more importantly, their desire to
Develop?
maybe submit an
Absolutely,
application?
absolutely. We've met on several occasions, and we've made it very clear that they acknowledge the restricted easement so that we can pull out of court. We'll sit down with them and talk about agreeing on what can be developed. We have met several times with Cariotis, both Alex and John, and when we walk away from them, we think they've got kind of an idea of what the homeowners would accept, and then when we see the lotting study, it's nothing like what we had talked about. As far as the tree ordinance, our board member Mel Tungate has met, we left court, and it was agreed upon that they would go out there and decide what trees would be removed. We've done that. Can't seem to get any action from them. If they were truly concerned about the homeowners, why didn't they address dead trees years ago, prior to the market changing? If they were truly concerned about the aesthetics of Ridgemark, why haven't they removed the dead bodies from the golf course?
Well, I certainly hope that a dialogue can be opened and the two sides work through this issue and a potential development possibly with the preservation of the rest of the resort area.
We're absolutely open to that, but you, as well as our homeowners, know from the last time he came with the shopping center that it's his way or the highway, and that does not serve our community.
Okay. I hope to keep an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Betancourt.
Maybe Churchill?
I want to thank the board for taking the time to listen to us people about our trees in Ridgemark and the county as well. Trees have community and social value. Trees are an important part of our community. Our streets, parks, playgrounds, and backyards are lined with trees that create a peaceful, aesthetically pleasing environment. Trees increase our quality of life by bringing natural elements and wildlife habitat into our urban settings. We gather under the cool shade they provide during outdoor activities with family and friends. Many of our neighborhoods are also the home of very old trees that have served as historical landmarks and great source of community pride. Trees have personal and spiritual value. The main reason we like our trees is because they have both beautiful and majestic, and no two are alike. Different species display seemingly endless variety of shapes, forms, textures, and vibrant colors. Even individual trees vary their appearance throughout the course of the year and seasons as change. The strength, the long lifespan, and regal stature of trees give them monument-like quality. Most of us react to the presence of trees with a pleasant, relaxing, comfortable feeling. Trees help record the history of our family as they grow and develop alongside you and your kids. We often make an emotional connection with trees. We become personally attached to the ones that we see every day. These strong bonds are evidenced by hundreds of groups and organizations across the country that go to great lengths to protect and save particularly large or historic trees from the dangers of modern development. I ask you, how many of your childhood memories include the trees in your backyard or neighborhood, like mine? The sentimental value of a tree is simply immeasurable. I ask, why the golf course side, the good golf course side, where there's lots of dead and dying trees, are not being addressed, like the entryway as you drive in, the trees that are large and the branches are heavy in weight and are dangerous, those trees are not being addressed. The trees that are of health on my side of the golf course are being taken down. I ask you to please vote to save the county's trees. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chuck DeVita. I do live in Ridgemark, not in the area directly affected by the trees that were removed. I wanted to share with you the deep emotions that I had on the day I was walking my dog in the area of Dan and South Ridgemark Drive and saw this huge construction vehicle tearing out large, tall pine trees. I'm sure you've seen pictures of this, and if you need, I can share them with you. I'm not a crier, and I was drawn to crying as I walked along. I'm not an arborist, but I am an Eagle Scout. Those trees weren't dead. And I urge you to extend this ordinance. I would also ask that you consider the loss in value of our homes in Ridgemark does not just affect Ridgemark. I have several friends outside of Ridgemark who have commented to me when they try to refinance their homes that the feedback they get is values are going down throughout Hollister because of what's going on in Ridgemark. This affects us all. Please extend this ordinance.
Good morning. My name is Rich Brim. I live at 252 Donald Drive. It's been 37 years since I've lived at my home. But because my son, who was 3 months old when we moved there, just came home for Thanksgiving, and he was disgusted with what's going on. Especially, I live right on the fairway, or right on the tee blocks of the fairway where all the trees are being taken out. The thing that bothers me most, I have a picture, and I'm going to send it around, picture of a tree right next to my house that has probably been there 30 years. It's been pruned every 4, 5, 6 years, so it's probably been pruned about 6 years. And JMK did a nice job pruning, I believe, last year or the year before. But now all of a sudden it has to come out. This is a healthy, healthy tree. And it amazes me that when they say there's only 100 and some odd trees, including the ones that were taken out on our hole, as well as the ones with X's, is close to 35 to 40 trees between the 15th and the 16th holes. This is unbelievable that 40% of them are on two holes. So I don't agree with the numbers they're talking about with these X's. Just went and X'd every tree out there, and it's really, really disgusting to me. I just asked the board, I want to first of all thank Jerry Munzer for coming out and helping us. He's listened to us, he's come to our board meetings, and I know some of your other board members that this can happen in your districts. And I just really, we have more and more out-of-town developers coming in. I've lived here a long time where it used to be just general contractors that were living here. Sonny Paulus, we got along. He helped us. He worked with us. And now all of a sudden we have out-of-town developers that don't care. They're taking everything away, everything that I've lived all my life for. This is my only piece of property I own is my house, and I probably lost at least a third of value if I could ever sell it away, because I'm right on the golf course. So many of us have these flag lots that are right on the property line, and we have nothing left. And if we continue to destroy the trees, which is the only beautiful thing we have really left out there, I just really need you guys to continue to work with us. And I want to thank you all for listening to us today. Thank you. Thanks.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank you all for those of you that voted the ordinance in, because this tree that I brought a picture of with me last time received a new lease on life thanks to you that voted this ordinance. I get up every morning, look out my window, make my coffee, there's that tree. And I say, thanks to you. Thanks for listening to us. I visited my aunt yesterday. She lives on 5th Street. There was a neighbor next door. He's raking leaves. His daughters are in this pile of leaves. It's about 3 feet high. I grew up in Marina. We didn't have trees, sand only. And they were playing in these leaves, and one of the little girls picked up a leaf that must have been a foot across and she just squealed in delight. And I thought, what a nice thing. These beautiful trees on 5th Street, giant trees. Could they pose a hazard at one point? Yes. But in the end, you've got the seasons, you see the leaves dropping, and you get to have these moments with your children. So with that, really, those of you that were around in the late 60s and the 70s may know the song, Give Peace a Chance, okay? Maybe you can make this your mantra today, give trees a chance. That's all we're saying is give trees a chance. Give the live trees a chance. Remove the ones that are diseased or dead. But please, we'd ask you to extend the ordinance to give these trees a chance. Thank you very much.
Eric Boys.
My name is Eric Boyd. I'm the golf course superintendent at Ridgemark Golf and Country Club. I'd like to state that the trees on the golf course were originally planted to protect the homes from the golfers as they're playing, to prevent golf balls from landing and hitting the homes. A lot of them, or majority of them, were planted. In the last 72 hours, we've lost 2 trees on the fallow golf course like this, uprooted with the root balls. That is kind of a fear and a concern of mine overseeing the property. As going forward, having an ordinance like this may limit our ability to react in time in an emergency situation. I fear that ordinance may slow the process down. In 2013, we had a huge, beautiful redwood tree that was growing up and leaning over one of the homes. The homeowner called me, said, Eric, I'm getting a lot of debris. I'd really like you to trim that tree back. So I came out, I looked at it, I called in our certified arborist to come out, take a look at it, and he started climbing it. He goes, Eric, this tree, it's cracking. We need to take it out immediately. I fear an ordinance like this is going to slow that process down. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Supervisor Munzer. Here are 4 pictures of trees. They are on holes 13 and 14 between Donald and Marks. These are an example of the trees. This is a very recent photo. I took this on the day that I and Eric were on the course that was on the 21st of November. These are very recent trees. There are 39 pictures in that trees in that picture that are healthy. There are 139 total trees on that hole. There are 29 that either diseased or dead and need to be removed. I first want to address, we've met with JMK 4 times this year, the board has. In January before I joined, and 3 times since I joined the board the 1st of April. I've personally met with them 3 other times for a total of 7 times this year. I'm committed to the negotiating process. I want that to go forward. There are lawsuits. I wish they all would go away, but that's the way you have to deal with things at certain points. I wasn't on the board when they voted for the lawsuit. I've sustained the vote since that time for reasons that I think that's the only way we're going to bring things to a head. On October 1st, JMK clear-cut 21 trees. 21 of them were 21 trees. 20 of them were perfectly alive. That's what brought what Alex talked to of the news and others. Alex, for today, said there were up to 150 trees they had marked with X's. That complies with my initial estimate. There are between 150 and 175 trees they had marked. We indeed did agree with 100 of them that were either dead or structurally putting houses in danger, which also need to be removed. On November 6th, after I did the tour, as Alex has talked about, he was part of that, as was Eric. On November 6th, they had our full permission to cut those 100 trees. As Barbara Thompson is here, She will tell you that the county ordinance allows them to cut such trees. The TRO is a matter of public record. It may or may not be extended on the December 11th. We'll see. It also allows for the cutting of dead trees. So we've now been since November 6th where the TRO will allow them to cut. And the trees I talked to them about in July, one of them is still uncut. I'm committed to the process of seeing that the dead trees are removed. I want you to save the live trees. There are approximately 500 to 700 trees on the course, the vacated part of the course, that are alive and need protected. There are also how many hundreds, maybe 1,000 on the holes they currently have an issue. So just in Ridgemark alone, you're probably talking, round numbers, 1,500 trees you're talking about. Maybe 5,000 or 6,000 in the county that you're talking about too, that we ask that they be preserved. Thank you for your time unless you have questions.
Yolanda Gale.
Morning. I'm Yolanda Gale. I live at 11 Florence Court. I've been up here before. And I just wanted to give you a little rundown of how I feel about all this. I lived in Hollister before I came here, in Los Altos, and it was beautiful there. When I drove for the first time here through San Benito County and Hollister, which was like in '89, I thought, my God, this is a beautiful place. I've never been here before. The rolling hills that we have here, the mountains, everything is so gorgeous. The trees downtown and around, and I couldn't buy any place else but in Ridgemark because of all the beauty and the trees in there. And I was going to the Pinnacles, which is also a beautiful ride, but now we're having houses built on Fairview. Pretty soon the rolling hills will be gone. We voted against fracking. Thank God for that, because you ruin this beautiful area. And I just hope and pray that you will continue with this ordinance, save these good trees. I have a dead one in my backyard, and that's fine for it to go, but save the ones that are alive and save our community for us. We are going to be here. Quiotes is going to leave, but we're going to be here. We're the ones who will be supporting this county, not Quiotes. Thank you very much.
Cheryl Bernardo.
Thank you. Thank you, supervisors, for listening to us. I feel that I represent a contingency that's a little bit different from many of the people who have already spoken, and this is very extemporaneous. But my mother planted trees on that golf course. She dragged water line hoses from tree to tree on that course to establish it. The golf course at Ridgemark looked exactly like the rolling hills across Highway 25. It was a turkey farm. It was not treed. It was rolling hills. It is what it is today because of people like my mother, my father, my uncles, Mrs. Schmidt, who's in the audience here, other descendants of the original board members who established that community, which everyone in this county has benefited from since 1975-ish, probably. And I'm getting very emotional because I helped plant stuff on that. I helped work as a volunteer at some of the original money-making activities that occurred in the building that now has been expanded to the clubhouse for Ridgemark. That is a community investment now owned by the golf course owners. It's understandable. We all have homes. We all know that when homes are built, landscaping is a part of the plan. I dealt with coming back here after 20-some years of being away, bought a property on Ridgemark Drive, and honestly, it was way overplanted. The first thing I did when I bought that property was remove some of the trees, mostly because they were impacting the service lines, not only to my home, but to my neighbors' homes. The trees were planted with huge root systems where they would have definitely interfered with sewer, water, and the cable, phone, and power lines. However, We all know that management of ourselves, our farms, our properties is adamant. You guys shave every day, for crying out loud. Hopefully your wives shave their legs. We bathe, we groom ourselves, we take responsibility for our individual bodies. We take up responsibility for our yards, our homes, our pets. We hopefully respect ourselves and our neighbors enough so that we don't impact ourselves on our neighbors. And that's what I see is happening here. I think everybody realizes that management is necessary for our environment. I live in community part-time in Utah that is national forest. Our national forests have been totally devastated by beetle kill, and the trees are full, the forests are full of dead trees. That's a phase of nature. This is not a phase of nature. Management is necessary. Thank you. Stephen Mills.
I just have a couple quick things to say. Why did I laugh when Mr. Kariotis was talking about his concern about the trees and about our safety? Because it's not about trees. What we're talking about today is not about trees. Go out there and take a look at what they did. They didn't. I've worked with tree people, and when you cut down a tree and take out the stump, you know, you leave it looking nice. What looks like what's out there is a war zone. I mean, they just trashed the place. I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's the whole plan, is that to trash the whole place and then come into you guys and say, hey, it's trashed. I'm going to put in houses that'll make it look a lot nicer. I mean, that's the overall plan. It seems to me that as elected officials, that one of the things the public has entrusted you with is the quality of life in this county. That one of the sacred trusts that you've been given is that you are the guardians of the quality of life in San Benito County. And long after Mr. Kariotis has taken his money and run, you and I will still be here. We'll still be living in San Benito County. And the question and the legacy that you will leave is the quality of life that we will have. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board before I close the public hearing?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Honorable Board. Before I speak, I must disclose that I have a conflict of interest with regard to this matter that is a per se direct financial conflict of interest under the California Political Reform Act and the FPPC guidelines. I am not speaking in my official capacity or in any way connected with the County Council's office. I am exercising my personal constitutional rights to protect my private property interests. And I own property that is located in Ridgemark within 300 feet of affected golf course closure areas. I do not live, and also let me reassure you up front and on the record that I have not spoken with anyone at the Planning or Public Works Department, with anyone in the County Council's office or any other county official or employee regarding this matter. I do not live near the area where trees have been removed, but I drive by it every day taking my children to school, and it's a crying shame to see the carnage that was wreaked there. And I also am not an arborist, but I can say that my personal observation is that the trees that were removed were all green and all looked green and healthy to me prior to their removal. Also, Ridgemark has a number of I've seen egrets, people have seen foxes, there's all kinds of wildlife there that's attracted to the beautiful, because of the beautiful trees and open space areas in the development. Regarding Mr. Kariotis' argument about it's his property and he can do whatever he wants with it, of course, that is limited by what he bought into. My understanding is that the original approval of the golf course was subject to a planned unit development where the golf course area was identified as open space in exchange for density bonuses being allowed to the housing. It's also restrained by the California Environmental Quality Act, the national, or the federal, the Migratory Bird Act, the Federal Endangered Species Act, and what have you. And within this ordinance, which I have to commend Barbara Thompson and the Planning Department for their hard work in putting that together in rather short turnaround timeframe. It allows for exemptions for diseased or dead trees, and any of the trees that were identified to be removed if they're legitimately diseased could be removed under this ordinance. And I would respectfully request that you extend the urgency ordinance until a permanent ordinance may be developed and brought before the Planning Commission and your board. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Marvin Jones. Full disclosure, I live about 4 blocks south of here. I do not live in Ridgemark. Just to remind you of the opening sentence of your land use element of your general plan. If you remember it, we've mentioned it before. San Benito County controls all of the private property in the unincorporated areas of San Benito County. So you already control it. If you go a little further into your general plan, the natural and cultural resource element, section 2.6, you say that the county will protect oak woodland habitats on private land. Hey, you extend this ordinance, you're just extending it to all trees on private land. It's that private land that bothers me. Mr. Murphy mentioned a little bit queasy about government controls and all. I'll go a little further. This ordinance and your general plan, they're parts of, fit right in with Chapter 15.5 of the 1992 United Nations Agenda 21 Program for Action. That's the one that President Clinton made federal policy with the executive order back in 1992, and that so you're in good shape. If you can go ahead and go this way, you're fitting right in with Agenda 21 of the United Nations Protocol. Thank you.
Once again, is there anyone else that would like to address the board on this item before I close the public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Just as housekeeping matters, I'd like to read the title of the ordinance for the record. It's an urgency ordinance extending interim urgency ordinance, which added Article 7, tree protection, to Chapter 25.29, general requirements of Title 25 zoning of the San Benito County Code, thus extending the moratorium on cutting of protected trees to protect and preserve mature trees in the urban area of San Benito County. The ordinance number that would be, if this is adopted, is ordinance number 931. On the report that was posted on the county's website from the Planning Department, I should note that there was one reference to ordinance 868, and that should have been 929. That was just in one place. It was referred to correctly in other places of that written report. I'm available for any questions, and I think just the staff recommends that the board take the action noted, if that's acceptable.
Supervisor Barris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a statement that I would like to make, but before I do that, Barbara, on this exemption that you have brought before us, this added, language, and maybe it's addressed in other areas, but I didn't see it. If there are roots that are affecting plumbing or under the house, is that somewhere addressed so that it becomes also an exemption? if there is shade perhaps that is attributing to mold in a house, which I've seen that
Yes.
happen, where it gets no sun and it affects the growth of mold, is that addressed? And if somebody were to buy a piece of property and they have a landscaping plan, and the plan is to remove old trees and plant new ones, would that be exempt? So I just need to know those things moving forward, because I think that it's important that there are exemptions like that for
Yes.
folks that, property owners that want to move forward with
Yes,
removal.
we have interpreted exemption number F, which trees, when they're determined to be an imminent threat to public health, safety, or welfare, or to property. So when there's been a question about whether a tree is damaging, sidewalk or improvements on the property, we would interpret that section to allow, when there's being damage to the property, to allow the removal of the tree or so that property's not damaged.
So then those things will be taken into consideration
Yes.
under this section?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other question is, yes, if it's part of the plan, and they want to submit a landscaping plan for replacement and removal of trees, if it's part of a project that's being considered by the county and there's a CEQA process and it's going before the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission for approval, that could be also exemption under the new exemption J.
Okay, so it just as an example, because I believe in due process, if Ridgemark owners or any other developer, maybe just a single, owner that wants to build their own home, they have a right to apply for a development project. And this exemption, 25.29.204, allows them to continue with that plan and be exempted, provided that all of these are considered, like the
Yes.
CEQA and the removal of designated trees or whatever else, a landscape plan.
Yes.
So this will not bar them
Yes, this,
from moving forward.
right, this section was raised by concern of developer in the county. And also, I've heard that the Business Council may be concerned with the language that it's going to somehow prevent development from occurring as be an undue holdup. So we want to make sure that when a project's being considered by the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors, that there's and it's part of the project or it's being included in a landscape plan that will address that, that could be an exemption.
Okay, very good.
No, there's, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for all the work you've done in this. And Mr. Chair, I have a short statement that I'd like to make, that I feel that this is a situation where everyone can lose if we don't approach it with cooperation and with compromise. Healthy trees should be protected, but a month and a half short of a year for an extension on this moratorium that has a lot of restrictions, a lot of violation of property rights, and a criminal element to violations, to me, is not acceptable. But it is my understanding that the San Benito Business Council is proposing to meet with the homeowners associations of Ridgemark in hopes that some resolution can be reached that will address their serious and valid concerns. I think personally that it's a great idea. With that being said, I can support a shorter extension of this moratorium, let's say to 90 days, which is 3 months out, to allow that to happen. And if it doesn't happen and there is no resolution that is reached, then we have the option to continue extending the moratorium until such time that we have a new ordinance in place. So I'd like to see that happen. Like I said, everybody is going to lose if something positive and cooperative does not happen. And I think this was a great way. This is the Business Council. It's made up of a lot of community folks that have been here for many, many years. They have an interest in what's happening at Ridgemark. They understand the effects that it can have on the economy. And if they're allowed to do this, I think it would be a real positive direction that this board can take. But like I said, I really think that a month and a half short of a year is just too long. So I propose a 90-day extension.
Barbara, do we have that option? Because I know the extension is a kind of a weird time. Is that set by ordinance, or do we have
The
At any
government
time
code,
you want
it's
to.
858, or 65, 858, I believe, indicates that the extension may be granted for an additional 10 months, 15 days, and then you can come back and grant one more year extension, but there's no more than 2 extensions that can be granted. So, for example, if we do grant 90 days now, we could come back for an additional year, but I think that you would lose that extra time that you don't, if you don't include the extension now, that time disappears because the second extension can only be for 1 year. I was wondering whether as a compromise for the board, whether you would calendar it for a date and time certain in March or even late February, like the first meeting in March, and the board can give us direction. If we don't have an ordinance there, you know, we could potentially, you know, if we can move for an ordinance by March of 2015, and then the board could take action to repeal the ordinance at that time if you want a date and time certain. For, you know, so it's definitely calendared before the board, but I wanted to see whether that would work.
It would work. I believe that really what I'm looking for is an opportunity for these folks to come together, for the business council to get involved, and for them to bring, you know, the parties to reach some sort of agreement. So,
No, I've closed the public hearing.
I believe, Mr. Chair, that we have a right as the board
Yes.
to make that change if we choose to, for the good of the community. So
Okay.
that's my point. Thank you.
Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, you know, I'm very much in favor of extending this tree ordinance, and I believe the last time we met on this was, it was a 4-to-1 vote, and I would like to see it go 5-0, and, you know, and we still maintain the opportunity to extend it a little bit longer and have staff continue to work on a permanent tree ordinance. At this point, you know, my comments, you know, I had an opportunity to talk with John and Alex Kariotis a couple weeks ago, and I appreciated their phone call and our frank discussion as far as what the future, what they perceive as the future of Ridgemark, and kind of my own perspective as one supervisor and what I would like to see happen out there. And I think we're, you know, as far as, I hope I was very clear with my position as far as future development and preservation of the quality of life, as this gentleman stated a little bit earlier. I'm a little bit disappointed today. Be honest, if it was me and I owned Ridgemark Golf and Country Club, and you have all these people, all your neighbors, and all this dissension, there's undoubtedly a loss of value to a lot of these folks' homes. A goodwill gesture, especially during Christmas here, the holidays for some, I guess, would have been that, hey, let's set aside this project, see if we could work out the broader plan for Ridgemark. You know, saving trees and habitat for wildlife is tremendously important. And trees are pretty resilient. I don't think anybody can question that. Some good trees have been destroyed and marked with X's that are perfectly healthy. And trees are, they're not like annual plants or grasses. They can survive a drought. They can survive, you know, conditions. And I think it would have gone a long ways for the Kariotises to say, hey, you know, why don't we take a step back and see and put the ball in the homeowner's court and try to develop a dialogue that way rather than say, no, we're going to move forward and take out these trees and that's the project. It doesn't sit well with me. And, you know, like I understand, you know, it's at some point in the future you're come forward with a development and you're look for support for that sometime. Now is the time to start building some sort of relationship. You got to get along with your neighbors too. But I'll support Supervisor Barrios' suggestion as far as a 90-day extension on the emergency tree ordinance, and hopefully people could, you know, protect their community and find some solutions that both sides could come out. Otherwise, you know, I certainly do understand the rest of the golf, you know, the existing 18 holes is at jeopardy as well, and that's not to do anybody any more any good either with their values in that development. So that's where I'm at with it.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I didn't meet with the applicants. They did call me, and I think he sent me an email, and for personal conflict meetings, I just couldn't respond and call them back, and I guess I'm the supervisor that didn't meet with them. I was ready to move forward on the 10th month. I'm okay with that. But if it's going to build the opportunity for relationships and the opportunity to meet together and hopefully some kind of resolution can be made between the owners and the homeowners, I'm okay then. I will support Supervisor Barrios' ideas as long as we are afforded the opportunity to extend the moratorium of 1 year, and that's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure. Can you say that? I just want to make sure that.
Yes, that's my interpretation, that you can extend it for another year after this first extension. You can have no more than 2 extensions.
Okay, I'm comfortable because it doesn't matter if it's 3 months today or 10 months today. We still have that other year that we can implement. So I'm okay, Mr. Chair. I'm willing to move in that direction.
Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I have, I said you bear with me, I have all these notes scribbled up. I don't have very much confidence in the Small Business Council. I think that it's probably best to get a couple of kindergarten teachers in the room to get everyone to get along, and maybe we could go back. Because in building a relationship, I don't know if that's possible. You know, I reluctantly went after, I supported this temporary ban a few weeks ago, and I say reluctantly because I saw this as a neighborly dispute. A neighborly a dispute that I didn't want to see our local government getting involved in this dispute. I never thought that there would be a day where I'd say that because I'm a Democrat and I look at government at the federal, state, and local levels as doing good, right? But unfortunately, this communication is more than broken between the neighborhood associations, local residents, and the business owners. And I understand, you know, and for me, I ran for supervisors I ran for this position and for this office to solve problems. But I just don't know how to solve this problem. You know, I really don't. You know, I understand that the changes that have occurred in Ridgemark are very difficult. You know, I'm a golfer. I golfed all those 18 or all those 2 courses. My colleague and I, Supervisor Battelle and I, we used to go out there and golf. It was awful rounds, but we still went out there and had fun. You know, so certainly that's a challenge, and it's unfortunate that one of the golf courses had to be closed. I understand that the prospect of future of development is difficult. You know, I understand the impact of property values, and I understand the impact to all of your quality of life. And so change isn't easy. But what I heard this morning was shocking from the business owner, because when you see changes occurring, as a business owner, I would think that if I'm the one promoting the change, I'm going to try to make it easy. But a statement he made, I'm just paraphrasing, we own the property, you don't. It's rude. It's offensive. As a supervisor, I don't live in Ridgemark, but as a longtime a community resident, I was offended because this is about coming together, about working together to ease this change onto the community, into all of your lives who have invested years and years in Ridgemark. And so it's unfortunate, you know. So I'm glad that the Business Council has decided to step up, but like I said, I'm not optimistic. I don't have much confidence in the Business Council, but I would hope some resolution would occur. I came in here this morning not knowing what I was going to do, to be honest with you. Like I said, I thought that this, and still is, a neighborly a dispute between all of you and the Cariotises. I hope that you guys would resolve your differences. But at this point, I would support this ordinance, Mr. Chair, in its entirety, because I want to see, I understand the impacts of quality of life are important, and I want to see the quality of life be preserved, but I understand that the Cariotises do have a business plan. I just think that it needs to be communicated in such a way that we could hopefully establish a positive relationship, a working relationship moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have a couple thoughts. And I was not on the board when the woodland tree ordinance was written, but it was my understanding that that came about because of a single couple with an issue of some oak trees that the utility company wanted to cut down. And one couple, one property owner brought about that ordinance. Today we have a room full of property owners. And my feeling is that we need, that woodland tree ordinance needs to be amended so that it provides a level of protection for the whole county for any area where a situation like this could come about again. This is not trying to go after a single property owner or businessman. It's to make sure we have ordinances in place to protect our natural resources. And I think this showed that our ordinance was lacking there. Staff needs time to come up with an ordinance. This is what we're doing today. We cannot come up with all the exemptions that need to be done, as has been seen, but we need to have something in place. As Ms. Betancourt pointed out, their temporary restraining ordinance or temporary restraining order only covers the abandoned golf course area. We need something in place that basically covers the whole county. The other issue is, yes, this is a private property issue. The problem is nobody knows where the one person's private property ends and the other begins. I have stood in a backyard, and the property owner, the household owner, showed me the cemented golf cart path was on his property. He allowed it. His house has been there almost since the beginning. It's part of the abandoned golf course site. But for 30 years, the golf course was using his property to provide access for the golfers. So, and I've stood in other people's properties where they said that a certain tree, redwood, huge redwood, was on the golf course, but the root system was probably under their house. And if the tree was to be yanked up, like some of them were yanked up, it would take their house out. So there are a lot of issues, and I think the homeowners deserve some protection, as all residents of San Benito County needs protection. We need to craft a ordinance, amend our existing ordinance, however you want to phrase it, to provide that level of protection so that this situation cannot happen again. I think I agree with Supervisor Rivas. I don't hold much hope out for the Business Council being able to resolve these issues in 90 days, because this has been going on since day one of the present owner. This has been going on for 5 years, this dispute that's going on up there. I don't see another 90 days resolving anything. But I think staff might be able to come up with an ordinance in the 90 days, a permanent tree ordinance within 90 days. I know that'll put some pressure on them. Oh, go ahead, Barbara.
I just want to say that that would be a draft for the board in 90 days for like a resolution of intention, then it would go to the planning commission and back. So it's unlikely to be finally adopted within the 90 days.
So it would not be,
So within the 90 days, we'd have to come back for another extension just to cover the time period that it's going to take to get it to the planning commission and back, which is usually another month and a half or 2 months.
well, okay, so I can go either way as long as I have the commitment of this board that in 90 days, it sounds like the permanent ordinance would not be in place.
Yeah.
That I have the commitment of this board that we would go forward with a year extension in order to get the ordinance done.
And may I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Barbara, does it have to be a year extension or just the amount of time that we need to get it complete?
It's just the amount of time, you could do it, it says you can extend it up to a year.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
have that option then.
Okay, and the board doesn't want just to do the 10 months and 15 days right now and then just direct staff to bring back a draft ordinance by March?
No, I think we're leaning towards just extending it for the 90 days.
Okay.
And then we'll probably be back here in 90 days, extending it.
Again.
It sounds like the amount of time that you feel we would need, the additional time you would need to have the permanent ordinance in place.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you. Barbara, can we put a time clock in the, within 90, if we move forward with the 90 days, and that's the time you're going to make the process to make it a permanent ordinance, and then we have to prove another temporary, which is our final chip in the bag. Can that chip have a trigger date? In other words, if once we move forward, we put a permanent one, can that supersede the temporary, the one-year temporary ordinance?
Yes,
Urgency?
yes. You could, when you adopt the new ordinance, you could repeal this existing ordinance. It could be done at the same time. When the new ordinance becomes effective, it could repeal the temporary ordinance.
I just don't, Mr. Chair, my concern, I kind of share your thoughts. My concern is that if we're going to move on 90 days and then do a year after that one, which I think we're probably going to end up doing, I want to make sure that 15 months from now, the opinion of the board doesn't change. So I want to move forward. Let's put it on track, make sure it gets done, and then there's some trigger dates that the permanent one will have in place that removes the temporary one out of place.
Barbara, do you think you could we have the full ordinance done in 6 months?
Yes, I think we could. We just, at some point, it'd be, perhaps the board would consider appointing a subcommittee to assist with the drafting of the ordinance, the concepts. There's many different ways to draft a tree ordinance, and I think that, or in the alternative, we could bring a draft tree ordinance to the board and just have the full board consider it. But there's some direction that has to be given before the final ordinance is developed. But it's doable within the 6 months. So if we have a draft by March, we could take it to the, or even February, we could take it to the March or April Planning Commission, then it would go to the Board of Supervisors, and it's effective.
Mr. Chair, I'm ready. I'm prepared to make a motion. I think this is a great, good faith effort, and it's important. It's necessary for the betterment of the community. I think 90 days gives the Business Council an opportunity to meet with the Ridgemark homeowners associations, and an effort has been made by this board to try to find a compromise and resolution. So,
Wait, before you make your motion, I just have a question of you.
what is that?
Okay. Extending it to 6 months, how would that affect the Business Council and their efforts to negotiate?
I think what it does, it sends a message that if it cannot be done in 90 days, it's probably not going to be done at all. So it'll be an effort. They believe that that's enough time that is needed to do that. So it's really more of a, you know what, let's get it done, and let's get it done quick. So, and I think it would benefit both sides, and we would end up with
Mr. Chair?
with hopefully some
Supervisor
resolution.
Rivas?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from our county council, because it just seems here, if we do this 90 days, we're just going to be back right here with another public hearing, hearing more testimony.
Right, so let me make a suggestion that will hopefully reconcile all of the board members' desires. So I certainly heard Supervisor Barrios wanting to give the local business community a chance to work this out. On the other hand, the time frame, the 10 months, 15 days, which seems like a long time, doesn't necessarily have to be. So this is what I would suggest. The board today extend the temporary moratorium for the additional 10 months and 15 days. It then instructs staff that within the 90-day period that it needs to bring a draft ordinance back to the board for approval with the eye of adopting it in the final ordinance within 6 months. If that happens, assuming that will happen, then at the time that the permanent ordinance is adopted in the 6 months, the 10 months and 15 days moratorium goes away. If something happens and the business council can't resolve it, or we fight over what's in or not in the permanent ordinance, we have additional time to work that out. There's no need for a second hearing or a third hearing. The 10 months and 15 days can always be shortened or eliminated once we arrive at a permanent solution to this. So my guess is, from what I'm hearing, is that we will not need a third extension that final year. We will be able to work this out long before the 10 months and 15 days expires. So just give us that time, instruct your staff to bring back a permanent ordinance for consideration no later than 90 days, which we will do. Once it passes board approval, we can move it on to the Planning Commission, get it adopted. Assuming that no one appeals it, it should be done within 5 or 6 months. Once that happens, the temporary moratorium, the 10 months and 15 days, goes away in its entirety. It's no longer effective.
That's very optimistic. Government doesn't work that quickly.
Well, then we have 10 months and 15
unfortunately.
days to do it.
I really was doing this as a message to the homeowners association and the Cariotises that resolution needs to be had. Or, like I said earlier, we are all going to lose in this, in the way it's moving forward. So,
Well, I think you've made your feelings quite clear, and I think your instructions to staff that if nothing hasn't been worked out, that in 90 days you want to see a permanent ordinance brought back. So if they don't solve it amongst themselves in 89 days, on the 90th day, the board's going to start solving it for them. So that's made clear, and that can happen irrespective of whether we continue this for 90 days or 10 months and 15 days.
Could I just interject something, not to derail the conversation? But Mr. Carrios wanted to make sure that the Board of Supervisors knew that he believes that the situation's been worked out with the Homeowners Association about which trees need to be cut down. And I expressed to him that, you know, that I thought that the board would still want to go forward with the ordinance because it's not just about that one development, it's about what type of ordinance we want countywide. So I just want to pass out what he was talking to me about.
And as far as I'm concerned, you are correct. This is not just about Ridgemark. This is about having something in place to cover the county, just as our woodland tree ordinance covers the whole county. This is the same thing.
Mr. Chair, I want to throw a wrinkle on this discussion process. Two things. One, we're going to include this, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
And, boy, sorry, Barbara, I don't want to put you on the, throwing you on the bus, I'm about to. Mr. Chair, we allowed a member of the public through our county counsel's office to express their positions to the board when we already closed the public hearing. So just want to bring that out to your attention, that's all, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you are correct. You are correct. You are
Mr.
correct.
Chair.
Okay,
Mr.
sorry.
Chair.
Okay, now, Supervisor Barrios, I believe you were wanting to say something else.
well, I wanted to make a motion. With my initial motion was going to be to accept the, make a motion per staff recommendation to approve ordinance number 931, like I said, per the recommendation, with a one change for an additional 90 days, and the new exemption that was presented by council. That was the original motion that I was not prepared to make any other motion other than that, Mr. Chair.
And are you making that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second.
And just for clarification, that means that we would change where it mentions 10 months, 15 days in the ordinance. I know it mentions it in the whereases, section 4, and also the exhibit, I believe, B. So we'll go ahead and make those changes to reflect that motion.
Okay.
To 90 days.
Okay, all those in favor?
Mr. Chair,
Aye.
for the
Oops, I'm
record,
sorry, I'm
I
sorry.
can't support this because I think that we need to take the recommendation that we just heard from council and just do this 10-month with the instruction to come back. So I can't support this motion.
Okay.
Just for the record. Thank
Okay,
you.
we do have a motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No.
No.
Fails 3-2.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion per staff recommendation just a moment ago through our county council, Mr. Granger, that we approve the action on today's agenda with the recommendation that the staff come back in 90 days or less with a permanent ordinance.
I'll second the motion with the amendment,
Yes, with the amendment, and I'm sure I missed some stuff.
and I'll accept that amendment as a second.
Okay.
And
Barbara, is
that's
that
all the actions that are listed on the AIT on page 340.
correct? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, passes 4-1. Thank you, everyone. I want to sit there and try to do... Let's do consent, and then we'll break for lunch.
Pardon?
What is going on?
I'm just joking.
Well,
I just, yeah, I don't know, that's unusual.
I know, well,
You don't know, plus or minus, you don't understand the
Well,
rules.
technically, it's probably not.
You didn't know.
Yeah, he just
You
came
accepted
up.
it.
she should not have,
Now you don't know
she
more.
should not have, okay, I know.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
If I only would have known. Today was the day I thought I'd catch up on some paperwork. 50% of it gone, sitting here. My God.
How's everything going?
Absolutely. Who's going to address that? Okay. That's come to someone that did not get them
Yes. I just found out about it in the audience.
But her husband and
Yes.
people are getting
They
the-
received the grass, they received the sand, and so we need to gather evidence of this, and then I will speak this next meeting because this pisses me off. She's just out of line. And you know what? She should be removed from office for this. She should have been honest about it, and she should not have. Sorry. Right. Right. So, can we talk about this and maybe get a game plan? Okay, great. I'm on the Facebook forum. If you can message me from there, or I can, okay. Okay, that's
We'll see you then.
Thank you. I don't live on the golf course, but I, oh, you work for Tampico. Oh, okay. Yeah, I work with Margaret. Oh. Through Heart House.
So in the back. Okay. And your name again, Liz?
Melissa.
Melissa, okay. I look forward to hearing from you.
Yes. We'll get a game plan together. Thank you.
I didn't mean to speak for you. I apologize.
No, absolutely. No, everyone needs to speak for us. Everyone needs to speak for us.
Well, yeah. You know what?
Business council, when do they come into this?
I just thought that same things we the reason I know is I'm on the grand jury.
You'll think of it at dinner.
Well, I know Francisco brought everything yesterday, so yeah, so I'm not sure who got it, so if you don't have it once you're back, just let me know. And then I will, after, if this all passes, then I'll have this on the website, and then I'll send you a hard copy. Do you need a hard copy, or do you want an electronic? Because I can email an electronic to a link to all of the board members. It's all it is it's going to be the electronic version of this. That's all it is. Is that okay? I know. Let's save a tree, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's appropriate, right?
Yeah. Oh. Oh. Well, I was building your last night. As long as it has consent, I'm all done. You know what?
I thought it was on that.
Wasn't cool? Oh, I can sit here. You guys didn't cool? You know what? It's like it's you have to say it's so I do know.
More than I should.
Well, and the benefit would be the safety. There you get, I forget what, I don't know what the actual.
No, 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 no. Yeah, no, no, no. We've gone through enough of those short meetings.
Brian, they're saying 1:30. They're just doing consent before lunch. They're not going to do it. Public hearing will be at 1:30? 1:30. Angela, that.
Who's Anthony?
Oh.
Have just a portion of the agenda that says District 4. You should have a part of our agenda that says District 4 and then all the agenda items.
Third meeting of the month, huh?
Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. We'll move on to consent agenda. I've been asked to remove item 11. Is 15 been pulled? 11 and 15? And then 23, we're dealing with on the consent, on the regular, we'll deal with that after lunch. Is there anybody from the public that would like to pull any item from the consent? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. Move on to item number 11.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I pulled that, and I did call Jim prior to, making the decision to pull it, to find out if we could
Wait.
get, oh, I'm sorry.
What was that?
Oh, is that better? Thank you, thank you. But anyway, I pulled it and I discussed this with Jim. What I'd like to see happen with this, well, I think this is a great thing, getting any contribution from the community, whether it be, supplies or clothing or food or money, just that we get a report at the end of the year, just stating what we got and not necessarily who from, because I know that some folks want to be anonymous when they make a contribution, but just to get an idea of what is coming to the county for the assistance of these areas of need.
We'd be happy to do that. One of the reasons we brought this forward is staff has just been accepting things, people come in, they give things. We just wanted to kind of get it a little bit more organized, and we think coming back to the board and letting you know the generosity of the community is probably a good thing to do.
Okay, so that is my only change to that, is the request that yearly report to us. So with that being said, I can make a motion unless you want to open it up.
Yeah, anybody from the public like to address the board on this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
I will make a motion that we approve per staff recommendation with a request to have a report yearly with the contributions received.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. Move on to item number 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this item's number 15 on our consent agenda. This particular item was asked to be pulled by our Human Resources Interim Director, Georgia Cochran, and this is relating to our Health and Human Services Office and their hours. So there is a fix to this, and so we have Georgia here to discuss that a little further. Georgia?
Thank you. We just wanted you to see the revised Exhibit A, which now notes that Health and Human Services will have its eligibility or public assistance and food stamps units open for business with the exception of the holidays. But all other departments are non-essential. They have appropriate standby personnel in place, but this was an issue, a legal issue that came to our attention after the board agenda was published. So that's the reason we wanted you to see this and not pass it on consent, because we have a substituted revised Exhibit A.
Mr. Chair. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, Georgia, thanks for the update. I do notice under some of the public safety departments, like the district attorney, the sheriff's office, it says closed to the public. Will they still be available to answer phone calls? Will they still be in the office? I mean, I understand if the offices are closed and they can't physically go to the office, but will they still be accessible?
Okay, so for the sheriff, the closed to the public the afternoons of December 24th and 31st. They will not be open or answering the phone for routine business.
Okay.
But emergency operations are completely separate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, George.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone from the public like to address the board on this item? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. With that, I think we will break for lunch and reconvene at 1:30.
1:30?
What's wrong with 1:30?
Hour and a half.
Hey, about what o'clock? No? Okay.